This is item 8.1, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville accepting the Temescal Creek Park renovation project. Maurice.
Mayor Asher, members of the City Council, about a year ago, the City Council awarded a construction contract to S&H Construction for the renovation of Temescal Creek Park. And I'm happy to say that we're finally complete with the project. It took longer than anticipated, but we came in under budget by about $36,000, which is good news. This item would typically be on your consent calendar, but we thought it would be a good chance for us to discuss the trees in the park. We've had numerous discussions at our Public Works Committee meetings. We thought we'd bring this topic to the full City Council. Unfortunately, Ruth's not here, but we'll proceed as we are. This is a diagram that shows all the trees within the park site, and you saw this diagram when we awarded the contract. And the issue at the time was whether or not we should remove 3 large eucalyptus trees that are right near the play structures that went in. As we all remember, we have red-tailed hawks that are nesting in those trees. And at the time, when we were awarding the contract, we were deliberating on whether to remove the trees. And then we had a room full of people here wanting to preserve them, as well as people very concerned about the red-tailed hawks that nest there. And what came out of that meeting was a City Council recommendation to prune the trees and to put cables in the trees to essentially hold the large branches from falling into the play area and potentially hurting somebody. We did that work. It cost us about $24,000 to do that pruning work. In the summer months, when the park actually opened up, and it wasn't completed, but the park was open, we actually had one large branch fall onto the play area. In fact, I've got a picture of it right here in the debris box. And that branch damaged the play surfacing that we installed there. So with that, we brought an item to the Public Works Committee to talk about it. And the committee recommended that we bring this item to discussion with the City Council. Staff's still concerned about those trees, and we thought we should bring it to your attention and wanted to get direction from you as to whether or not you wanted to revisit our decision on what we did there, or whether or not, and if we did so, we would then go through a process of noticing the neighborhood again, of a discussion about the trees. If not, we could just continue as we are, but we wanted to hear back from council on this issue.
Jennifer?
So I'm curious if the amount that we came in under budget on this project, which is wonderful, could be considered a fund to try and figure out creatively. There were lots of ideas that were raised at that meeting, and you know, a lot of it had to do with cost in terms of how much to how many measures to take basically to try and ensure safety, and no tree is ever 100% safe, but that doesn't mean we cut down all our trees. So you know, I remember creative ideas of some kind of structure that could even protect an area. There were examples of a museum in St. Louis, I believe, that had such kind of art and also kind of protective measures. And so I'm curious if the council would be willing not to revisit cutting down the trees at this time, but using some of that additional fund that's left to look at other measures that could enhance our safety under the trees.
Mayor Asher, are you proposing that we bring this topic back and reconsider all aspects of it, say maybe in February?
No, well, I'm not. I'm actually asking if we could direct staff to look at additional measures, since there is actually a place for funding that. Perhaps.
Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Kurt.
Maurice, let's go back and just revisit this. If I remember correctly, there was concern of about a number of 3 to 5 trees that were back in the corner by the play area. So we're not talking about, first off, removing all the trees, correct?
No. Well, the trees that, no, we wouldn't. At the time, the proposal was to take the large trees that are, I guess, on the north side of the park, north of the play area. Mm-hmm. I think they're numbered here, I can't read it very clearly, 13, 14, and 15?
I believe that was right.
All right, okay.
And then at that
About
time...
12. That's right
Potentially
over the
12 too.
playover.
Some of those trees look like double trees. I mean, they're all coming out of the same trunk.
And also, the intent at the time was to remove those trees and also to install or replant trees that were used to this environment, because these are eucalyptus trees that we're talking about removing, correct?
Yeah, these are eucalyptus, so the ground conditions would be potentially acidic, I guess. And so we would try to find a tree that would survive in that kind of ground condition.
And also, if I remember correctly, at that time, there was a lot of the residents in the area that said that no one was using that park, and I've been to that park recently, and there's a lot of young children using that park.
There's quite a bit of use.
So I think
Oh, yeah.
the whole nature of that park has changed, so
Right.
I think we need to bring this item back.
I would support that. Is
I have
that
a couple of
motion?
comments first.
I would make this form of motion.
Second.
Okay, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, how did we have a lot of branches fall during the big windstorm?
We actually didn't. We had small branches, nothing big, a lot of leaves, but nothing major fell out, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
to me, I don't think that you can guarantee 100% that branches are going to fall. I mean, the eucalyptus were fine in the park, and yet trees along Adeline fell onto people's houses when I went out in the morning. So I don't think that we can find necessarily a tree that is going to be absolutely foolproof. The other concern I have about this, I do want to preserve the nesting space for the hawks. I do also want to make sure we're preserving a natural environment, especially with kind of the artificiality that we've introduced into that space. And that includes that rubberized surface, which I hate, the rubberized surface. I know that people think that this protects their child, as if children somehow bounce. I don't know, but to me, I think that they don't wear well, that eventually, you know, the rain, you'll get puddles under them, and that it adds to this kind of plasticky feel, this really artificial feel. And we already have a lot of that going on in this park. And so I'm not interested in having the trees removed. I think that the cabling, if it worked during that windstorm, that's telling us that it performed pretty well. If we need to do some more cabling or pruning, I'd be really interested in doing that. And my kids play at this park. I agree. There are a lot more children at this park, and I want children to be in a more natural environment. And I'm also hoping that as we go forward and think about parks and play structures in town, that we start moving away from that plastic, rubberized model, because this could be a really beautiful area. And I think that the hawks, having that little piece of nature in the triangle is really nice. And so I'm not as worried about the trees, but would support some more measures to make sure that they're safe at this point.
So,
Do we want to have a vote?
yes.
Okay.
And if you have any sense of what it would cost to have an arborist perhaps go and check those trees every, quarterly or something, so that, again, we diminish the risk.
We have an arborist report that really discusses the safety of the trees, and I don't think their recommendations would change much. It's very difficult to predict which branch is going to fall. You can't really cable each one. And I will say, we can't say that the cables worked during the windstorm. Branches didn't break, so we were fortunate with that. And if they did break, hopefully they were ones that would be cabled. Right. And so I guess we could always pay to put more cables up, but you never know. There's only so much you can do, really, with those cables. Or prune more.
Right.
And then, of course, we have other trees on the other side of the path that are on private property that I know Kurt was concerned
They're very
about.
dangerous. They need to be trimmed. Nose
But,
needs to be sent.
I mean, we
Which
could have an
ones are on
arborist
private
come by,
property?
but I think the arborist will continue to say that
It's-
they always pose a safety problem.
If I remember correctly, Jennifer, it's the tree number 9. It's right over
Yeah.
the path.
And that's
There's-
private property?
And there's
Yeah.
big snags there. And that tree is, to me, it looks like a very dangerous tree.
I don't know if this
Call
is
the
an old
question on the
picture, but
motion.
there's a lot of trees that were taken out a few years ago, I think, on the far eastern end of the park, and this picture looks like it has all those trees. I'm not really clear.
Let's call the roll, please.
And I'm not sure if I understood exactly the motion. Is it to revisit, is it bring back a staff report on all the options, or was it
No,
a
I think
limited
Kurt
number
wanted
of
to
options?
revisit the entire thing, didn't you?
I want to revisit the entire thing. I want the neighbors to be noticed, and I want to come back and talk about the trees.
I'd also like the Parks and Rec Committee to weigh in on this as well, if we're going to take.
I would say that if you directed us to bring it back, we'd want to go to the Parks and Rec Committee as an agenda item and just follow through a whole process of publicly noticing it, and then,
How about
of course, the
bringing it
hearing
back
here.
in March? That'll give you enough time.
Well, let's take the roll call vote, right?
Do you want to hear from public?
Oh,
Does anyone like to speak on?
anyone from the public want to speak on this item? No? Okay.
Sorry.
So this is to revisit.
The motion, as I understand it, is to revisit the decision regarding the trees in its entirety and
That's
to
correct.
bring it back to council at some, right now, unspecified date.
March is, that'll give you time. to
And I
notice
assume
it.
that means considering removal of the trees.
That's
and
correct.
That's the impetus. Okay.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember West.
No.
And Vice Mayor Atkin is excused, and Mayor Asher.
No.
I think that was a mistake on your two ladies' part. I think when you have children playing underneath this area and underneath those trees, that it should really be looked at. So I just want to go and notice that I think you made a mistake. Thank you.
And I'd like to add to what Councilmember Brinkman says, all it takes is one tree limb and one dead child. This is a mistake. We should be revisiting this.
Okay, with that, is there anything else to report, Maurice?
That's it. Thank you.
On that item? Okay, on to 8 point, pointed out to me that we neglected to vote on accepting the Temescal Creek Park renovation project. So we need to go back to 8.1. And let's go ahead and call the roll on that. To accept it?
8.1.
Yes.
So we need a motion and a second.
I'll move to accept the project.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who's the second was Mayor Asher?
Yes.
Roll call or just all in favor?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would just like to add that there's an edge to the concrete as you enter the park on both the 53rd and the 47th Street side that would be good to take care of.